responsible for the rollout of SLCP globally, as well as providing the training and support for the SLCP users so that you can navigate the process and the system with ease, so to say. At present here, I'm based in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. I am caught in what seems to be an indefinite lockdown. We are, since the end of last year, everything is closed, nowhere to go. And it seems that even though vaccinations are now starting, that's still something, there's no end date yet, unfortunately. So that's my situation. As you can see, I have 4 other speakers today, 4 other teachers, and they are in sort of similar situations. But maybe, Utaya, you would like to introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, this is Utaya, and Sharon, I think there's a small mistake there. I'm a specialist, not the senior director. I'm a specialist from the Social Impact and Sustainability Department from Gap Inc. And when it comes to COVID, India is actually reporting the highest number of daily cases in the world. And partial lockdowns, weekend lockdowns are being imposed in a lot of states in India. So thank you.
Thank you, Utaya. Rupa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I am Rupa Shri, and I represent Sumera, which is the Verification Oversight Organization, and in short, it is called as VOO. And in terms of our situation, I don't think it's any different from what we are all facing today. India is battling the second wave, infecting more people and spreading more faster than the first wave. And like Utaya was mentioning, there are lockdowns, like partial lockdowns in the country, and the situation is not looking so good. But I am hopeful that we shall pass this too. Thank you, and welcome to the training. Thank you, Sharon.
Sami, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Sami Ben Mansour. I am the CSR manager at Ustex International Bandouache. We are stitching and the laundry facilities based in Tunisia and specialized in denim. The situation in Tunisia was okay at the beginning of the year. We were all quite happy, but unfortunately, since a few weeks now, the cases surge a lot, and now we have a lot of restrictions in place. Curfew, and situation is not okay. We thought we kind of escaped it, but COVID always wins at the end. And welcome everyone to this webinar.
Thank you so much, Sami. Mr. Venkat.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. This is Venkat. I head the compliance for Shahi Exports Private Limited and its group, based out of Bengaluru, Karnataka, India. Insofar as COVID is concerned, I think we are reaching a stage where from the battle, it has gone to the war stage. So we're all battling out the pandemic, and I guess it's all inclusive, extremely worrisome, fearful, and all kinds of interventions are being thought of by the specialists to ensure that the chain is broken. And I'm confident we have extremely resilient population all over the world who are extremely well aware and will overcome it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Venkat. Yes, so everyone, we are more than a year into the pandemic. We are in a place where we never thought we would be. And it must be very, very hard on many of you as well. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about who you are, the type of organization you work for, as well as your experience with SLCP and your current COVID situation. So we're very curious to hear from you on this. As you can see, there's a poll in progress. You can simply click in your answer in the screen. And I see the questions here being answered on the back end. I'm giving it a minute, and then I'm sharing the results with you. So please let us know who you are, which country you are dialing in from, which type of organization you work for, the experience you have already with SLCP verification, as well as what the COVID situation is in your country. I see many of you are finding your way to the poll. So if you haven't seen the poll yet, just click on polling or poll in your screen. You will see the questions pop up. You can simply click on the answer by giving your answer. And then I'm seeing that now most of you have voted, so I'm giving it like half a minute more to be able to get all your answers in, and then I will share the results with you. Some final answers are coming in. I encourage you to let us know where you are from, the experience you already have with SLCP, the type of organization you work for, and what your COVID situation is at the moment. Okay, I am now closing the poll and sharing the results with you. As you can see, most people that are dialing in today are from Bangladesh. So 47% of you are actually located in Bangladesh. I see far behind is our other countries, and then follows, let's see, Indonesia, 12% of you are from Indonesia, 9% from Vietnam, and then some other countries as well. So welcome everyone on this call. Great to see such a turnout. You're mostly manufacturers, 84% I see, and then there's some people dialing in from brands as well as industry associations and some other type of organizations. I am seeing that most of you do not have experience yet with the SLCP verification process. So just let me count it up. So 23% of you have either gone through the verification process or are going through it now, but 42% as well as, let me see, so 77% of you have not gone through the verification process yet. So we will take that into account while we explain what the verification process is like. I think most of you are lucky to have a partially open society, so to be able to at least go to the stores, go outside, and to do your work, I suppose. So that's great to hear. So thank you so much for sharing this with us. Now we have a little bit of an idea who you are on the call. It would have been great to hear from each and every one of you, but we have now over 650 people joining, so that's a little bit hard to do, unfortunately. But now that we know each other a little bit, let's start with the training content. So what is it that we're talking about today? It is verification. And as many of you don't have a broad experience yet, let me start with a little bit of an introduction. Introducing first ourselves, so the Social and Labor Convergence Program. What is it that we aim to do? Who are we? So we are a multi-stakeholder initiative. That means that many industry organizations came together and said, this audit fatigue, mainly, this is something we want to do something about. So as a multi-stakeholder organization, we defined a mission, which is to implement a tool and a system that can help us come to better and improved working conditions in global supply chains. And by doing so, we really reduce like audit fatigue, and we come to better data that we can use for this, etc. So that was really the aim when we started SLCP. As you can see, there are many people speaking on this call. It's not only me from the SLCP side, but also you saw Mr. Venkat from Shahi, Sami from Ustex will speak, as well as Utaya from Gap Inc. They are just a few of the many signatories and the many supporters of this program. So we really focus on collaborating together because we feel that only through that way we can come to actual change. So now that you know a little bit about who we are, I want to show you the tools and the process that we use to achieve our mission. So first of all, when we speak about our tools, we talk about the converged assessment framework, and that actually consists of a couple of different documents. So first of all, we have the data collection tool. So the data collection tool includes all of the questions that can help assess the working conditions within a facility. We have a verification protocol as well. That's what we will focus on a lot in today's webinar. It sets the rules for the verification process. And then there are some guidance documents. So a facility guidance document, as well as a verifier guidance document, helping the two main players in our assessment process to know how to conduct data collection and an assessment, as well as a verification in the correct manner. So these different documents are used in the SLCP assessment process. The SLCP assessment process starts with data collection. So a facility that answers the questions in the data collection tool themselves, answering questions related to social and labor conditions. The next phase is data verification. So that means that a verifier comes into the facility and assesses the correctness of the data that was included in the data collection tool by the facility. And then when there's finally a verified set of data, that's when data sharing can take place. What's important to mention is that that verified set of data, so what you have at the end of the SLCP assessment process, is a verified assessment report that does not include any scoring. So that means that in the report, there's no pass or fail. SLCP is not a standard. We don't say what, let's say, good or bad working conditions are. We just collect the data, objective data about what working conditions are within a facility, and we leave it up to our users to decide what they want to do with that data. So there's no scoring from SLCP side. So as mentioned, today we focus on verification. So data collection is what we covered last week in last week's training webinar, and we will talk more about data hosting and sharing in next week's training webinar, but today we really focus on verification. So what happens in verification? In verification, an SLCP approved verifier, they check the accuracy and completeness of the data that is already gathered by the facility in the first stage of the assessment process. And they do so within 2 months of the facility completing their self-assessment. They also have to follow the rules of the verification protocol when they do so. So what that means is that the verifier either confirms, so says that the information from the facility is indeed the correct information, or amends, changes the original assessment data based on the evidence that he or she finds during the documentation review, the worker interviews, and/or the on-site walkthrough. Also, we already mentioned it, we have a verification oversight organization, what we call the VOO, that is in place to approve qualified verifiers and to ensure the overall quality of verification. We will go deeper into all these different elements, but this is in general what we see as the SLCP verification process. So an approved verifier checking the accuracy and completeness of the data that's already gathered by the facility, and then as well sharing, having that data to then share with end users. So we have had the question as well sometimes, why is verification necessary within the SLCP process? If a facility collects their data, why can't we simply share that data then directly with, for example, brands or other end users? So within SLCP, know that verification is mandatory for two reasons. One is because we really want to ensure the integrity of data. We know that brands and other end users will not replace their own audits with SLCP, with the SLCP assessment process if they're not sure of the data. So to make sure that we reach our objective of combating audit fatigue and having less audits, we really need to ensure the integrity of the data. That's one. The second one is that we want to ensure quality as well. And then when I talk about quality, it's a lot about consistency as well. So how to interpret a question, what kind of answer to give to a question, that can change from person to person. And that's why it's important to have qualified verifiers who know exactly how to interpret a question and how to give an answer to it. So those are the two reasons why we are having a verification as mandatory in the process. Apologies. And who is it that you will meet in the process? Know that during the apologies. Know that during the assessment process, you will meet a variety of organizations. So first of all, there is the verifier body. The verifier body is the body for whom the approved verifiers work, and you have to contact them for a quote for your verification. A verifier body is approved by the VO. That means that they have to go through an application process to see if their organization is equipped to do the verification for SLCP. So the verifier bodies, they have verifiers working for them. It's first the organization that needs to get approved. And then next, it is the individual that will have to go through an application process to be approved to conduct SLCP verifications. As mentioned, it's the verification oversight organization who is responsible for the application and the qualification process and decides which verifier bodies and which verifiers are qualified to do the verifications. At the moment, we already have SLCP verifications available in 51 countries. At the end of this year, we will be available in 55 countries and regions. So we are still, for example, to launch in Pakistan. And as you know, we are also still waiting to fully launch in Bangladesh, Indonesia, as well as Vietnam. These are countries that we work together with ILO Better Work, and from May, June onwards, there will be we will launch together with ILO Better Work in these 3 countries. But know that you can always go to the gateway, because it's on the gateway that we have our full rollout schedule available. So if you want to know if your country is part of SLCP, you can always go to the gateway to check. So who is already using SLCP? That's a question that many of you have as well, to understand if the brand that you're working with, for example, is already accepting SLCP verified data. On this slide, you can see the brands as well as the standards that are, you're seeing the manufacturers that are already using SLCP data. We also have a list of brands and standard holders that are already accepting SLCP verified data to inform their social compliance programs. Both of these lists are available on our website. If you're a manufacturer, you can sign up for it. so that you can show as well to possible new business partners that you already have a set of SLCP verified data available. And there is no need to do, for example, a pre-audit before wanting to start business with you. So let me stop here for a second. One, to catch my breath, but two, also to do a new poll with you to see if these statements are true or false. I would like to understand if I've been able to explain to you well what the verification process is like. And we would like to do so by checking in with you on these different statements to see what we need to explain perhaps a little bit more. So go to your screen, click on poll, and give us the answers to what you believe the correct answer is to these statements. Okay, I see that many of you have already voted. Please, for the ones who haven't done so yet, vote as well if you believe a statement is true or false, and we will be sharing the results with you quickly. I see most of you have now voted, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results with you. So let's see, the first one, the verification protocol sets the rules for an SLCP verification. That is indeed true. So 93% of you had that correct. We have the verification protocol as part of the Converged Assessment Framework, and it does set the rules for verification. The second, verification is optional in the SLCP assessment process. That is indeed false. So 74% of you had that correct. Some of you think it's true, so still a quarter. It's not optional. Data can only be shared if verification has actually taken place. Then the third one. So a verification must take place within 2 months of completing an assessment. This is indeed true. So 89% of you had that correct. After a facility fills in their data, within 2 months, the verification needs to take place. When you as a facility see that this is not feasible, make sure you don't submit your assessment yet on an accredited host until having booked the verifier body for your assessment within the time frame. Then a verifier's role is to check the correctness of the self or joint assessed facility data. That is indeed correct. So 94% of you said that was true as well. Then the final statement. So the verification oversight organization manages the verifier selection process and conducts quality checks. Also, that is true, and 83% of you had that correct. So I'm happy to see that even though I have a bit of a throat ache, that I'm able to explain this well, and that, yeah, you got everything right. So let's see, is there anything else? Perhaps let me check in with Anne. Are there any other questions that you see coming in a lot right now on our Q&A that we should be touching on right now?
Not overly repetitive. There have been some questions about, but you probably reached it. You haven't reached this yet, but the timelines between uploading your self-assessment and verification. I'm sending the link, but there was a 10-day from the time that the self-assessment is uploaded. The verifier, it has to be submitted to the verifier but within 10 days. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Anne. So indeed, we will now go a little bit deeper into the verification process, going through the three different phases, I would say. So before the on-site verification itself, and then after the on-site verification. But let's start with a general overview of the verification process. For this, I will activate the chat. So all of you can now fill in what they believe makes a difference between an audit and an SLCP verification. So you've seen the chat appear on your screen. So you can make use of that to let us know, and the others know as well, what you think is the difference between an audit and an SLCP verification. Please don't be shy. Just give it your best guess in the chat. We're not seeing much coming in yet on the chat, so please don't be shy and just tell us what you think is the difference between an audit and an SLCP verification. I see coming in first, an audit will be giving marks. Also, another answer, audit result tends to give a judgment, while in verification, there's a win-win solution. Audit is evaluation, verification is accuracy. Let's see, data validation with no score. I see a lot of good answers coming in over the chat. They're all coming in to us as panelists, so you can't see all of them. It also says audit means to do an assessment that you will pass or fail, not the case with a verification. Okay, yes. So as I'm saying, I see a lot of good answers coming in over the chat. And I think a lot of you have it correct. So when we look at a social audit, what we see then is an inspection by an auditor that really assesses the working conditions in a facility to come to a pass or fail regarding social and labor compliance topics. That means that the facility is subject to the audit process. You are not actively participating in this process, you're really subject. So somebody comes in, assesses, and walks away with that data to the brand owner of the audit report and the attached corrective action plan. So it's not about the facility having the data, but it's about the person that asked for the audit. That's the person that has the information. While when we talk about SLCP verification, it is not someone that comes in and collects data, but it's someone that comes in and assesses whether or not the information given by the facility was correct, and either amends or includes extra information additional to the data that's already there. So there is no conclusion on anything that's good or bad. As you are saying, there's no score, there's no pass or fail, and the facility themselves are an active participant in the verification process. So you're not passively letting the audit pass you over, so to say, but you're really participating in the process. Then at the end, so this is very important, you are the owner of the verified assessment report. So if the data needs to be shared, that the facility is giving the permission to do that. It is not shared without your permission. So all these things are very, make that it's a very big difference between an audit and an SLCP verification. It's a, as most of you noted through the chat as well. So how can you, when you have an active role in the process, ensure a successful verification? So it starts with completing the cell for the joint assessment. As you know, you have to complete at least 95% to be able to submit the data. Then comes in selecting a verifier body for the verification. So we will go into all these different elements in a little bit, but now it's just mentioning all the different actions that are needed from a facility side. Also necessary to provide all the information for a cost estimation by the verifier body. You need to work with the verifier body and the verifier to schedule the verification and provide access on site as well to the documents and the personnel needed to come to certain decisions. Also important to clarify your concerns and answering all the questions as early as possible and at least within 48 hours after the on-site visit. Finally, this is very important. At the end, you need to review the verified assessment report in detail prior to finalizing it. So you as a facility are responsible for the quality of the final verified assessment report. I mentioned the 3 phases that we will be going through in this webinar. So first, before the on-site visit, that is when you select the verifier body after online, after accepting a quote offline. The verifier body then assigns a verifier, team of verifiers to your verification. You're in contact with that verifier and set a date for the on-site visit. The verifier will need to review the self-assessment, make a plan, and communicate that with you. Then the on-site visit itself. The facility receives the verifiers on-site, provides a walkthrough, provides access to relevant personnel, relevant documents, and you will have an opening and closing meeting together with that verifier. The verifier will, during the on-site visit, assess the correctness of the self-assessment. Then finally, after the on-site visit, the verifier will have to submit its findings on the accredited host platform, and you will have to discuss these findings within 48 hours with the verifier. You either approve or dispute the report, and then have a final verified assessment report to share. So I can give you all of this in theory, but I think it's much better to hear from a person that has actually gone through the process. So Sami, I would like to hand over to you here to help people understand a bit what it is actually, what it's like to go through a verification process and to participate in SLCP.
Thanks a lot, Sharon. So the SLCP is a great reference for us. We were quite new of it, using it. So we were assessed a few months ago, not long ago, but it was a very good experience in the sense where we were able to. So first of all, we fill in the informations. So there is this kind of a lot of questionnaires, a lot of questions you need to answer. At the same time, you also would need to secure the proper documents to justify it for the day of the assessment, the verification, let's say. So the good thing is that the questions are detailed. So you can answer question by question, and it gives quite a good overview about the. Let's say it sums up all the social aspects and many social aspects of the questions or the SLCP. So it's quite detailed. So it's good in a sense. It can help you tackle the issue where you have troubles, and it can help you identify what points needs to be addressed more than the others. So yes, so first of all, we start by gathering all the informations. What I would advise you is that as soon as you fill in the informations before the verification, before the inside verification, please gather the document throughout the answering process, because there are a lot of questions. So as soon as you gather the documents, the better you'll be prepared, more than having answered everything and then justifying. It would be better for you and for everyone. Then so the very same day, the very day of the verification, so the SLCP come and help. Of course, there is the help desk that can be useful. You can also address questions to the SLCP members if you have any doubt or anything about some questions, and it can happen. So they can help you understand better the process and the questions. When answering the question, you will figure out yourself how points maybe needs to be more clarified, and then you can discuss them with the verifier the day that he comes to the on-site visit. The good thing about the SLCP is that it's more like, and Sharon also mentioned at the beginning, it's not an audit. It's a verification. It's more like an assessment. So the approach is not the same. So they're not going to be, okay, this is wrong, this is not okay, this is okay, this is not okay. The good thing is that the approach is different. It's more a collaborative approach, when the SLCP agent will help you to tackle some of the issue you yourself encountered, and you will also help you to find a solution, depending on, of course, of the situation you're in. And in that sense, we as a factory, we did find it very useful and very practical, because the approach was really kind of a helpful approach that would help us. Okay, guys, you can do that. Maybe you can do that. Maybe you can improve that in this area, in this thing. And that was very helpful for us. So it wasn't the approach of like, this is wrong, this is not good. So also for further improvement, you can discuss with the SLCP agent and the members. Also our concern, we had some concerns when the SLCP agent visited our factory. We had some points where we were not 100% sure or hesitant about it, or not to know exactly how to tackle it, because sometimes depending on the country you're in and the SLCP requirement, there can be a little gap between the practical and the theory. So the good thing about the SLCP is that they are very helpful on that. They adapt and they're flexible, and that plays a lot, I think. So my advice would be to the other factories, that I saw 42% didn't go through the process yet, is like is go ahead, don't be hesitant or anything, because even though this time it might not be perfect, the SLCP experience will help you tackle the area that needs to be tackled, and will help you improve the area that needs to be improved. And the approach, as I said, is different. So it will be very helpful for the next year and the year after to know more about it. And also try to be as honest as possible. There is no good or bad answer. So everything could be helpful in that sense.
Thank you so much for that, Sami. I think it is indeed very helpful to hear from a manufacturer who just went through the SLCP process for the first time and to get some good tips from that. Thank you so much. So with that, I would like to now start discussing the 3 different phases of verification. So I mentioned first we start with before the on-site visit. So what do you need to do before a visit? Apart from, of course, filling in the assessment, you need to find a verifier body who can conduct your verification. So you go to slconvergence.org/verifier bodies to understand which verifiers are available in your country. So you will see a list of possible verifier bodies, and you can contact them for a quote. First, as mentioned, you need to find a verifier body that's available in your country. Second, when you ask for a quote, she needs to come back with a reasonable cost estimation. We're often asked, like, how much is the cost of an SLCP verification? And that's a bit difficult for us to say because the cost estimation really depends on the country you're in, the location within the country, the size of the facility, the number of workers in your facility, and other factors. So because all these factors matter, it is very difficult for us to say this should be the cost of a verification, but you can keep in mind that it is a little bit more expensive than a regular audit because there are more things that need to be checked within a verification. There are more answers in a data collection tool than in a regular audit, as it's supposed to replace all current social compliance audits. So apart from the availability in your country and the cost of the verification, also you have to find a verifier body that's available within the 2 months after you finalize your assessment. And there might be some other factors that totally depend up to you. So perhaps you already have a relationship with someone, or you know a certain verifier body through previous audits. It is all up to you, but you decide with which verifier body you would like to work. When you've decided on the verifier body offline, you need to select the verifier body online. So you are either on FFC or HIG filling in your assessment. So you did your data collection on one of these 2 platforms, and it's on that same platform that you choose the verifier body. The verifier body will assign a verifier. You cannot do that for yourself. So the verifier body will assign a verifier to your verification, and that verifier will have to work on the platform of your choice. So how does the verifier body select the verifier for your verification? There are some mandatory verifier requirements. So one, the verifier must not have done the verification of your past year. So as SLCP, we recommend having a verification about once a year, and the verifier must not have done your verification the previous year. That's one. They also must not have had any involvement during the assessment phase, the self-assessment phase. So for example, were they a joint assessor on your assessment, they cannot be the verifier of that same assessment. Also, at least one verifier must be eligible to verify in the country where you are located. And then finally, one verifier at least must speak one of the languages of the workers in your facility. Apart from the mandatory verifier requirements, there are also some recommended verifier requirements. So we always recommend different genders, So that, for example, for a broad group of workers, that it is easy to speak to the verifier. So there has to be an appropriate gender as well for the circumstances within a facility. All the verifiers preferably are eligible to verify in the country of verification, and preferably all of them speak at least one of the worker languages as well. But these are recommended, these are not mandatory. And we often get on the help desk questions coming in that people cannot select a verifier body on one of the accredited host platforms. That usually has to do with the fact that the facility has not selected all of the languages spoken within the facility in their facility profile on the gateway. You have to select all of the languages. So here some examples are given for Chinese. You have to select all of them and save those changes to make sure that there can be a match between a verifier and your facility. Because as mentioned, the verifier needs to speak at least one of the languages that the workers speak in the facility. So that match is made on the gateway. The gateway looks at the profile of a verifier and looks at the profile of a facility to see if there's a match. And if the facility does not select all the languages spoken in the facility, often a match cannot be found. So this is very important if you want to be able to find your verifier body. So what happens then next? You found your verifier. There is some communication between the facility and the verifier before the on-site visit. You need to receive at least 10 days prior to the start date of the verification. You need to receive a plan for what will happen during the on-site verification. The facility needs to share information with the verifier to be able to, so that the verifier can understand what is actually needed on that on-site visit. So for example, they need to know the size of the site as well as the number of workers to understand how many days should they be on site, how much time should they reserve to do their verification. Also, if you decide to go for some virtual verification activities, for example, because COVID does not allow for an on-site visit, then the facility and the verifier have to discuss the IT system within a facility as well to see if it is even possible to do some virtual verification activities. So these are all the things in the communication between a facility and a verifier before the on-site visit to come to a plan. And what does that plan look like then? Well, it's sent at least 5 days prior to the on-site visit. So that's important. When there is a combination of a virtual verification together with an on-site verification, then there's more detail necessary in the plan than if it's simply an on-site visit. So along with the verification plan as well, the verifier will include the document list, so all the documents that they would like to have access to on site, the SLCP policy on ethical conduct, as well as a description of the SLCP dispute mechanism for if anything goes wrong. So if you as a facility are not satisfied, if things are not going according to plan, then you know as well what to do because you are aware of the dispute mechanism. So this is all that goes into the planning. I mentioned time on site. So how much time does a verifier need to conduct the on-site verification? There are rules set in the verification protocol. I won't be going to this table in detail, but know that the verifier has to follow these rules. So they have to check, okay, there are this many workers, then there are this many worker interviews, for example, that I need to do. So there are all these formulas behind the information that you will be giving that the verifier will use to come to a conclusion on the time he or she has to spend on site. Know that a verification should not take longer than 4 calendar days. And why not? Because we know it's quite a burden for a facility to host a verification for over, let's say, the course of a week. So that's why we really didn't want it to be longer than 4 consecutive calendar days. So if that's the case, if you need more than 4 days to do the on-site verification, the verifier body has to assign a team of verifiers to make sure that there is enough time within that 4 days to do the verification of all the self-assessed data. So I mentioned virtual verification activities. This is something new within the SLCP verification protocol. We work together on this with ILO Better Work, and it really has to do with the fact that with COVID-19, a lot of travel restrictions came into place. So to reduce the time on site, the virtual verification activities are possible. It is, however, always the facility's decision to permit the verifier to engage in any virtual verification activity. So it's the facility that decides in the end. So there are a number of activities that can happen virtually, like a pre-verification meeting, an opening meeting, documentation review, virtual interviews, virtual walkthroughs, and wage and hour records review. What's important to mention is that even though virtual verification activities can reduce the time on site, in general, because a lot more planning goes into it and a lot of IT solutions need to come into place. So in general, the overall time that is needed for a verification is longer. And this could also mean that the cost for the verification could be higher. So that's why we say from SLCP side, if in any way possible, a full on-site verification, that is really the way to go. That is probably what's the best choice for both the facilities and the verifiers. But we know we're living in a difficult situation right now. So if necessary, the verification protocol does give guidance to how to conduct virtual verification activities. So we are at the end of this section now, and I have another poll for you. So let me pull it up for you on the screen. And as you know by now, you can see the questions on your screen. You can click your answer, so whether a statement is true or false. And then in a minute or two, I will be sharing the results with you and explain a little bit more if necessary. So go ahead, click on polling. You will see the questions on your screen and you can decide whether something is true or false. I see around half of you have voted. So please go ahead and go to poll or polling and just any guess. You don't have to be sure of the answer. That's absolutely fine. But just take a guess and then we will go through them in a minute. Okay, let me close the poll for now and share the results with you. So to the first statement, a verifier can be assigned to a facilities verification when country and language match. That is indeed correct. So 89% of you said as well, that is true. Know that this match happens through the gateway, as I mentioned. So for that, it's important for a facility to fill in all the information about the country and the languages within the facility in their profile on the gateway. Then the second statement, brands select a verifier body and request a verification for their supplier. This is false. 55% of you said that was indeed false, but 45% thought this was true. Remember, an SLCP verification is not an audit. So that means that a facility, they have ownership of the process. You as a manufacturer decide when you want to start the process, and you at the end own the data and decide with who you want to share your data. So it's not a brand partner who is asking for a verification or is sending somebody to come to your facility. It's the facility themselves that decide to go through the SLCP process and to share their data afterwards. Let's see, the third statement. Virtual verification activities always reduce the time needed for the on-site verification. So this is not entirely true, and I understand why some of you have said that it's true. So 72% says that it's true, but it's not always the case. So most of the times it's true. It will reduce the time needed for the on-site verification, but often it will also add time for the verification in general. So the overall verification takes more time. So that was the reason why we say this is false. The fourth statement, an on-site verification should take no longer than 4 consecutive business days. That is indeed true, as 80% of you say. It shouldn't pass over a week. It shouldn't pass over the weekend to make sure that the burden on the facility is reasonable, so to say. Then the fifth statement, the facility receives the on-site verification plan at least 5 days before the start of the visit. This is also true. So 67% of you had that correct. Not sure what I can explain more about it, but just to know that you as a facility should be well prepared and should receive this at least 5 days before, so that you can actually facilitate a successful on-site visit. Okay, that was it for this poll, and let me check in again with Anne and to see if there are any questions that came up often and we should be addressing live. Anne.
Sharon, no, everything, all different various questions, and we're answering them quite nicely. So I think everything's running smoothly so far.
Okay, well, then just a reminder for everyone, use the Q&A to ask any question that you may have. So anything that comes up related to the verification process, we're here to answer your questions right now. So please feel free to put them in the Q&A. For now, we're going to take a little break, 5 minutes. I'm going to put some more honey in my throat, and then we'll be back in around 5 minutes to continue the training session. Up, I hope you've all been able to go to the restroom to get a drink, and you are ready for the second half of our training webinar. So for the second half, we will start with discussing the on-site visit. So we have spoken so far about the verification process in general, what happens before the on-site visit, and now we're going to discuss the on-site visit itself. So what actually happens during an on-site visit? What will the verifier do at that moment? So during the on-site verification, the verifier will check really the completeness and the correctness of the assessment data in the data collection tool. So the verifier will look at the responses that you gave as the facility in the self-assessment and will see whether that is accurate or inaccurate. So if you as a facility have provided inaccurate answers, then the verifier will correct your response and explain why he or she is making the change with some supporting evidence attached to the question. If you haven't provided an answer, because that is possible as you only provided 95% of the answers in the data collection tool, then the verifier will include the correct answer instead. And will also explain why you were not able to answer that question. So that means that on your side, before the on-site verification is mentioned, you have to fill in at least 95% of the questions, but the verifier will complete 100% of the questions during the on-site visit. Also, the verifier will submit the verified assessment report within 10 days after finishing the on-site verification. So within 10 days after being at your facility, you will receive a notification from the accredited host that the verified assessment report is ready for your review. Know that during the on-site visit, the verifier can also make use of an offline Excel tool. So if the internet connection, for example, is not stable during the visit, the verifier can actually use an offline Excel. That Excel, this one that you're seeing here on the screen, is empty. So there are no answers from the facility side, but you see the blue part, that is the part for the verifier, and normally the part in gray for the facility will be filled in, and then the verifier can, in the part in blue, also fill in their findings. So how can you then support that on-site verification? When a verifier comes to check in on the correctness of your self-assessed data, how can you support them, and how can you make sure that their time on site is limited and you spend it as effective as possible? So know that you will need a team to support the verifier, as there will be a number of different activities. First of all, there will be an opening meeting. So in the opening meeting, all relevant staff should be available. There will be interviews with staff, management staff, there will be interviews with workers, there will be an on-site observation, a walkthrough, documents review, and then at the end, there will be a closing meeting with all of the people that were in the opening meeting as well. So for all these different items, different activities will happen, and you can read all about it in the verification protocol. So as mentioned, this document contains all the rules and all the procedures for verification. So it describes quite precisely as well how all these activities should take place. So that really helps you prepare as a facility as well. One thing that is very convenient to know is the term workers. So the verifier will come on site for example, worker interviews. What is meant by worker? So a lot of the rules in the verification protocol will refer to them. Let me explain it to you a little bit so that you know as well what kind of people, for example, the verifier needs to speak with to be able to come to their conclusions. So workers are people within the facility that are really part of the production process. So they either produce the goods, but they can also be involved in the operations related to the product, such as distribution. Examples: cutters, sewers, packers, all these people that are part of the process, the production process. Important here to mention is that people are non-supervisory, so nobody reports to them. We really talk about people that are part of the production process. Also mentioned before, the findings of the verifier. If there's anything that you would like to change or you would like to clarify with the verifier, it's impossible to do so. It's important to do so either in the closing meeting or within 48 hours after the verified assessment report becomes available, because that will give the verifier enough time to look into what you wanted to discuss, to see what the correct answer is, and to make sure that your verified assessment report accurately reflects your facility's working conditions. So make sure that quickly, when you notice something within the report or during the closing meeting, to immediately raise that with the verifier. Sami said it before, the verifier is there to really help you, to support you, to make sure that there is a good quality report at the end. So it's important to discuss any doubt or query you have with them. Here is an example on the screen of a verified assessment report, what it looks like. Circled is the accuracy index, because the accuracy index gives you a little bit of an indication of the number of questions that are answered differently by the verifier. So in this case, you can see that 92.6% of the questions in this verified assessment have been answered the same by the verifier as the facility. And then the remaining percentage, the verifier gave a different answer than the facility. So in the verification summary, you see an overview of the questions where the answer from the facility differs from the verifier. So it really helps the facility to see where the where you have a different opinion on the answer to a question. So then you also know what questions you would possibly want to discuss with the verifier. But let me here hand over to Utaya from GAP, because Utaya can, as a second party verifier body and as a verifier for SLCP himself, can give you a bit more information about how the SLCP on-site verification process goes, and give you some tips as well to go through it successfully. So go ahead.
Right. Thank you very much, Sharon. So hi, everyone. I'm Utaya, a specialist from the Supply Sustainability Department, working in GAP Inc. in the India office located in Bangalore. And as a long-standing signatory of SLCP, so GAP Inc. is pleased to see the start of implementation at scale. And our goal is to fully transition to the SLCP assessment and verification process. And we hope and expect other brands will also start leveraging SLCP. So as an industry, the benefits of convergence and collaboration is achieved, and also it reduces the audit fatigue. And this benefits the entire supply chain. As a global sustainability team in India, which is in Bangalore as well as Delhi, we have 6 approved verifiers and 2 certified SLCP trainers. And we, which includes all 6 of us, have conducted several on-site SLCP verification in 2019. And we have also conducted 4 virtual SLCP training sessions for our vendors across India in 2020. And we have also renewed our approval status of the verifier as verifiers in 2020. But unfortunately, due to the pandemic and restrictions from our management, we were not able to visit any facility in person to conduct any SLCP verification in 2020. So even in 2021, as of now, we have not visited any factory for any sort of verification. And until we receive further go-ahead from our company to visit the facilities, we will not be conducting any on-site SLCP verifications. And with the increase in COVID-19 situation, we're just hoping for the best so that we are able to visit the factories at the earliest with some reduction in the coronavirus outspread. Okay, and now I'd like to talk about my experience and also our team's experience as a verifier body, wherein we have conducted the SLCP on-site verifications. So I'd like to talk about some of the inspiring improvements that we have seen in the factories which we visited. So SLCP self-assessment actually are helping our factory teams to understand their compliance standards without any external recommendation. So since the self-assessment tool which the factory is filling in is covering a vast topic, starting from the labor practices, recruitment practices to termination. So the factory, wherever they need any changes or any updation in their working methods to meet the standards, they're easily able to do it. So the facility uses the data collection tool for their self-assessment of their own data, and it helps them to understand and take responsibility of their own working condition. And also by implementing the converged assessment framework, duplicate proprietary social audits are eliminated, and the factory management is able to redirect their resources to improve working conditions, working on the corrective action, etc. And also management system questions are guiding them to formulate and implement various policies. So SLCP step 2 covers the policy procedures, goals and strategies, roles and responsibilities, communication and training, self-assessment, and also continuous improvement. So we all know that at facilities, they have various levels of management systems implemented in paper and also the implementation of it in the factory. And because of the step 2, factories are able to use them as a guidance document, and wherever some procedures or some policies are missing, they're able to easily upgrade them and also trying to implement them in their facilities. And ownership of the data facilitates the capacity building and also empowerment of their HR teams. SLCP is actually based on the ownership, and the facility initiates their own assessment, and also they control the outcome. So this is a change from the conventional audit methodology in which brands and stakeholders used to take the lead. And SLCP assessment is completed by the facility. Facility selects the verifier body, and also facility owns the verified assessment report, and they control how it has to be shared. And this results in one data set which is shared with all buyers. And also comprehensive data of the facility is available in one place. So SLCP aims to be the number one source of social and labor data. And SLCP covers all the data points, questions collected in nearly all the assessments and audit schemes from various brands and other stakeholders. And also SLCP has been developed by collaborative efforts of the brands, manufacturers, and stakeholders. Along with the data points in each of the steps, the report also provides accurate and precise details about the facility's basic information, building structures, production and operation information, subcontractors which they use, and also the complete worker details. I'd also like to talk about some of the discrepancies, understanding of the tool, and of also the process and system. Since this is a very new concept, most of the factories are facing some kind of challenges in completing the tool. So facilities have recently started adopting SLCP beginning 2020. A very few of them implemented it in 2019. And facility teams are not very well versed with filling in and navigating through the offline and online tool, and to complete a 95% in the tool before they submit and select a verifier for their self-assessment verification. And also, since there are multiple registrations, such as registering on the training platform, completing the e-training modules, creating an account in the SLCP gateway, selecting and creating an account on the relevant accredited host. All these process is a bit confusing, and facilities are requiring constant support from VOO and also participating brands, which are helping them with SLCP. And the main challenge which we are facing is with the interpretation of the questions which are in tool. So majority of the inaccurate raised by a verifier in any report is due to the misinterpretation of the question by the facility team when they're filling their self-assessment. And verifier focuses on entering the updated during verification and inaccurate most of the time when we were conducting the assessments in 2019. And also understanding the question to accurately answer them has been a challenge by the facility teams, and bridging this gap should be considered to improve the accuracy rate of the self-assessment filled by the facility. And we have also faced numerous technical issues. For example, the data filled and saved in the offline tool, when they are entered into the accredited host, they are not capturing all the questions. They're not transferring all the question into the online tool. So conditional questions which are answered also doesn't get copied sometimes from the online tool into the from the offline tool to the online platform. And also few facilities are unable to complete and submit the self-assessment on the accredited host, even though they have completed more than 95%. So there has been a fair share of technical challenges also which we faced in 2019, which have drastically reduced in 2020. And hopefully in 2021, with the new launch of CAF 1.4, it might, we hope it to reduce even further. And also mismatch of questions, the answers which are given to the questions and also the relevant documents. And since the questions were misunderstood, answered in a different way than it should have been, even the documents for those relevant questions were inaccurate. So these are some of the discrepancies and understanding issues of the tool, which we faced during 2019. And also when we were, verifying the report in 2020, which were verified by third-party verifier bodies. So these are some of the challenges which we faced. Sharon, can we have the next one, please? Yeah. So way forward, training materials have to be improved for better understanding of the CAF tool. And since with the launch of 1.4, there is a section of more info, and which explains the questions, and we would request SLCP to improve them for the better understanding of facility teams which are filling in the data. And also since CAF 1.4 has lesser questions to be answered, a guidebook for the facility teams and the verifying body and for the verifier can be developed mainly to address each section and respective questions in them, which will help us reduce the understanding issue and also improve the accuracy rate of the self-assessment. And also calibration sessions can help us align and understand the questions, which will reduce mistakes and misunderstanding of the questions. So frequent calibration sessions for the verifiers and facilities should be organized, especially to discuss the challenges, could be technical or with the tool, which will result in higher accuracy rate, and also joint stakeholder meetings, which includes brands, facilities, verifier bodies, the verification oversight organization, the VOO, to discuss the success and challenges once the new CAF 1.4 has started in the supply chain. So that's it with the experience which I had to share as a second party verifier body. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Utaya. I think this was very helpful for facilities to understand as well what you see from a verifier perspective, and also it shows in which directions we can still improve. I think it's very important to note that SLCP is a very young initiative. We started operations in 2019. We became more fully operational in 2020, and we are now, as mentioned, in over 50 countries and regions. But we continuously improve. So we're really looking for your feedback in this as well. As you mentioned, Tutaya, in the data collection tool now, version 1.4, we have already integrated a lot of changes, but we definitely want to hear more from verifiers as well as facilities to continuously improve. Let me now go over the final part or the final stage in the verification process. What happens after the on-site visit? So after the on-site visit, as mentioned, the verifier has 10 working days to submit their findings online. So that is when the facility will receive a notification as well that the verified assessment report is available for reviewing, and you can start your review. It is smart to start with the verification summary, because in the verification summary, then you will find all the information I mentioned before, the accuracy index, but also information related to legal compliance. I mentioned as SLCP, we don't do any scoring. We don't look at passing any code of conduct, but we do have a lot of questions related to international labor standards and national labor laws. We believe that those are sort of like that's the basis that all facilities need to comply with when it comes to social and labor conditions, because that is stated by the law. So in the verification summary, you can find the percentage, the accuracy index of questions that you answered the same as the verifier, or rather that the verifier answered the same as you as a facility. And you can see the questions that the verifier gave a different answer to than you. You can also see the questions, the legal questions, that the verifier indicated, or you indicated yourself, that you are not compliant with when it comes to international labor standards or national labor laws. So in this verification summary, it gives you a good overview of things, let's say, that have changed with the verification and that you may want to have a good look at before you approve the report. You are responsible really for the quality of the final verified assessment report, so have a good look through it, and you have 14 calendar days to do so. Because after those 14 days, on the 15th day, the report will be automatically approved. As mentioned, the verification and the verification summary gives you a lot of information, but there's also a reader guide. And that reader guide will help you even more to navigate the verified assessment. Then after you've reviewed and you feel that the review is done, all the issues have been resolved with the verifier, as mentioned, please do so within 48 hours after receiving the verified assessment report. Everything is in order and you can now approve the report. It will be sent to the gateway, and from there you can share it with any of the business partners that you wish to share your information with. It is also possible that you want to dispute a verified assessment. So you believe that the process, the SLCP verification process, was not conducted correctly. Know that you can only dispute a verified assessment report if it is indeed the case that the process was not correct. So you cannot raise a dispute on a question level. It is not the case that, for example, if you feel that the verifier gave an answer to a certain question and you feel it should be a different answer, that you can dispute the report. It has to do with the the rules of the verification protocol not being followed, that is when you can dispute. As you can see, you can dispute within those 14 calendar days that you have to review the report. And at the end, it will be the verification oversight organization who decides whether or not the dispute is valid. After the verification oversight organization has decided on this, there's no new dispute that can be raised. So their decision is final, so to say. Now that we've gone through the whole SLCP verification process, so before the on-site verification, and what happens after, I would like to give the word to Venkat from Shahi Exports, as he can explain more about the SLCP verification process. They went through it with many of their facilities, and can give you some tips on how to complete it successfully. So, Mr. Venkat.
Yeah, many thanks, Sharon, many thanks. And good morning and good afternoon to all the participants in this webinar. Let's look at the value addition straight away. Value addition from several points of view. Let's also look at the business ecosystem in which we operate. We operate in an ecosystem which is called as capacity selling or contract manufacturing. We are in that space. So when we talk about it, we are essentially talking about a B2B model, a business to business model. Why I am trying to get into the business dimension of the entire gamut of social compliance and SLCP is to ensure that there is a tangible value addition to the end customer at the retail store. Today, the customer, to refer a customer as a king is quite misleading. To call a customer an emperor is the right thing. So he wants things to be delivered in a particular season. He wants a particular design to reach his either home or in the retail store in a particular way. Now, let us look at how the social compliance audits can be a great facilitator to business. Quite often in all the private conversations that we do have a conversation whether compliance is important or business is important, and we converge on the simple paradigm that yes, a compliant business model is what is required. Okay. Now SLCP, if you look at the core of it is the convergence part of it. We had a diversity or a divergence in the entire ecosystem of social audits. When I say divergency and divergence, I am talking about a situation where every brand with whom we partner with had its own template, a format, a code of conduct. You could call it a benchmark. You could also call it a reference point for them. Okay. Now, the moment a social auditor comes to an unit in order to carry out a social compliance audit, one of the key things that happens is the unit is on the surgeon's table. The entire unit is surgically dissected in order to find out what are all the various parts that govern this body called a unit. And when it happens, you always find that there's one compliance resource who represents different verticals. To be specific, there are 7 modules in the SLCP. When I talk about the 7 modules, the recruitment and the hiring expert who recruits workers or mobilizes workers has got a different skill set. Then you have a payroll guy who handles what is called as the wage part of it. You also have the working hours module. You have specialists in employee treatment, involvement, health and safety, and all these dimensions. Essentially, we are talking about 7 modules in 7 dimensions of SLCP who converge together in order to deliver what is called as a social compliance. Now, let us imagine a scenario when all these people join together and deliver what is called as a more accurate delivery of audit, which facilitates a faster onboarding of the facility and thereby enhances value to the sourcing team to ensure that the business is done. Now, to cut a long sentence short, all that I'm saying is that what happens in a SLCP is that when the sourcing team actually starts engaging with a buyer, or rather a potential buyer or a customer to do a B2B contract, he starts asking for several issues. The normal process is a technical audit followed by a social compliance audit. And normally social compliance audits are, to use a heavy word, accused of delaying the process of delivery, delaying the process of enhancing the productions, delaying the process of adding value to it. But then yes, that's not the case with SLCP. Now coming to Shahi. Now, Shahi happens to be India's largest manufacturer and exporter of apparel, employing more than about 100,000 workers. And we also have been manufacturing close to 500,000 garments a day. Now, let's see how we embrace this entire process of SLCP. It's almost 2 years since we partnered with SLCP while the India launch was done in May. In another month, we would be completing 2 years. We are on the technical advisory committees. We have completed SLCP verification in 2019 itself. Mind you, I'm talking about the later half of 2019. Less than 6 months, we had time to learn and do it. Today, despite the pandemic, we have completed SLCP verification in almost 33 units, which means that close to two-thirds of our units are SLCP certified. Okay, we plan to complete all other factories as well in the coming days. Yes, there are challenges. There are issues that we find that requires a complete kind of an understanding of it. Sharon, you could go to the next slide. Uh, yeah, how do we look at it? Like I said, the efficiency part of it, the business efficiency part of it. Don't you think the SLCP, which talks about a converged framework, a more unified framework rather than a diversity of framework? You and I are looking for which brand we are looking, what is the template, what is the kind of a process they need to follow. In fact, this has been one showstopper in creating a talent pool of people who can be called as universal champions of social compliance. So SLCP addresses that vital, gap that comes on. We have teams which get trained in all the 7 modules. So you have everyone going through the same kind of a template. We do have the necessity to do away with multiple audits. Brands and suppliers who have to divert and invest resources. Let us say a factory with about 2,000 people has got about 50 people working in HR, payroll, time office, training, worker engagement initiatives and all that. How much of these people are engaging in order to get through a compliance audit is one big question. If you are able to converge or unify all these resources into a single platform called workers being, or rather workers well-being, which is the core of any HR or sustainability specialist, the job is done. And when we unlock these resources in ensuring that when a buyer comes in, we already say that we are already SLCP certified. So you have a reference point in order to further the business. You also have a reference point in unlocking the value of those resources who get otherwise bogged down with multiplicity of audits. Now, we have also been reducing the dependence on third parties. We are ready for, this tool has been successfully emerged victorious even in the pandemic situation. Okay. Now, we just imagine the credibility of the audit process of SLCP. We talk about an extremely robust framework, a standard framework, which is universal in its outlook. We look at several COCs which gets amalgamated into a single COC called the SLCP. It gets collaborated by more than 240 stakeholders as of now. We can customize the data to meet the requirements of various brands. Essentially, what I am trying to drive at is that the verifier, I do not know when we talked about version 1.3, version 1.4, and then version 1.5, for all you know, Sharon would say it's no longer the verifier, it's the facilitator. And by this, we also address the core concern that came in Mr. Uttaya's presentation, that we need to develop capacity. And when we talk about capacity building, we need to have one consistent language of social compliance audit. I would say SLCP happens to be the lingua franca of all social compliance audit, primarily because there could be challenges in answering those 2,134 questions that come in the version 4 part of it. But yes, while answering the question, by default, capacities are built within the system, and that capacity remains for a very long period of time to come. That capacity sustains on a longer period of time, which eventually value adds to the business. In India, we talk about the worker well-being, in terms of about 105 million people engaged in this industry. I'm talking about an industry which is the second largest employer only next to agriculture. In a state of where I operate from, the state of Karnataka, we actually employ more than 10 lakh families, this industry. So don't you think that they're required and warranted an international intervention which shall throw up the core of social compliance audit as workers' well-being? and their amelioration in development. So we will eventually have only one breed of people who will deliver this lofty ideal for all of us, and that is SLCP champions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Venkat. I think that was really helpful in understanding what you, how you conducted SLCP or went through the SLCP assessment process. And also, I think as you have had a lot of experience with different verifications, really helping understand the benefit of doing so. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I saw in the questions coming in that it was a lot of information. Many people are asking, can I get summaries of this? Will I be able to get the slides? Know that the recording and the slides are available on our help desk, and our help desk includes a lot more actually. So a lot of the questions you're asking, you can find the answer to those questions on our help desk. So slconvergence.org/helpdesk, and you will be able to find the answer to your questions as well as the recording and the slides of today's webinar. With that, let me start the topic of quality assurance. So we've looked at the verification process, what it looks like in general, and then the different phases of it. So before the on-site verification, the on-site verification itself, and then after the on-site verification. But there is this whole system that we have in place, so quality assurance system, to make sure that verification actually renders high quality verified data. So to go into that a little bit more, why is it so important to us to have high quality true data? It's because we say it cannot start anywhere. We cannot reach our mission if we don't have reliable data. So as a multi-stakeholder organization, we really focus on working together with all the different stakeholders in the process. So as mentioned, there's manufacturers' ownership, there's the brands changing as well their social compliance programs to include SLCP data. And we really need the transparency and the reliable data gathering to start with for really strong improvement programs, because that's what we want to achieve in the end. We want to achieve that we don't spend all our money on conducting social compliance audits, but that we can actually spend our resources on improvement programs. And if we don't have good data to build on, how can we know what kind of improvements are necessary? So also here we focus a lot on trust and on collaboration to make sure that we come to strong improvement programs and we work on them together. So brands work together with manufacturers to invest really in changes within facilities to have positive working conditions for workers in facilities. We know that we are just one piece of the puzzle here, but we really focus on gathering that data to make sure that we can contribute to that mission. So as was mentioned a couple of times during this webinar, there is an organization in place to oversee the verification process, the quality of it. That organization is called the Verification Oversight Organization, or the VOO. And what it is that they do, they manage the verifier body and verifier selection process. So first the organization and then the individuals apply, and that application is reviewed by the VOO as well as tested. Then there are some quality assurance activities that happen after the fact to oversee the overall quality of verification and to give as well recommendations to further improve it. We have all these procedures explained and available in the quality assurance manual that is available as well as mentioned before on our help desk. So you can go to slconvergence.org/helpdesk, and there you find under verification the quality assurance manual. But let me hand over here to Rupa, who works for the verification oversight organization, which is Samara, because she can explain a lot better all the different procedures and processes that are in place to ensure the quality of the system. So Rupa, let me hand over to you here.
Thank you, Sharon. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay. For the reason why we are doing or why we are here is, like Sharon explained, it's a collaborative effort, and we need to, for SLCP to be successful, there are various QA activities that are put in place to make sure the end user have a lot of confidence. So Sumera is the VO for SLCP and responsible for ensuring the integrity and of SLCP verification and quality of verified assessment. So what does this mean? For SLCP, quality means the verification process is consistent and verification data is reliable. So it's our goal to make sure that verifiers understand the SLCP requirements and the verification outcomes are credible and dependable, because there are a lot of end users that would be using the SLCP data. So they need to have the confidence in the whole process. So that's why SLCP and Sumera has come up with different QA activities to ensure we have a qualified pool of SLCP approved verifiers that are available in our system, and also to ensure the quality and integrity during the SLCP verification process. So Sharon has already spoken so much about the quality and integrity, about the data, the verification data. So like I mentioned, the end user should have the confidence in the system. So there are different activities that we are doing as as VO. The main activities that we do is selection of verifying bodies and the verifiers, and also the quality assurance activities. Today we'll talk in detail about both these factors that we are doing. So the first one, the process begins with selection of the verifying body. Here, we talk about second party and third party verifiers. So when we talk about second party verifiers, we refer them to brands, and we talk about third party verifiers who are the 3PAs. So for the VBs, the VB should also, the verifying body should also go through a approval process. So the first one, even before going for the approval process, we need to check if they are meeting our criteria. So there are two criteria that we look into. First one, they have to be, the VB should be SLCP signatories with at least 3 years of experience, minimum 3 years of experience in conducting the social auditing. Secondly, the VBs should also have a management systems in place to select and monitor the approved verifiers to ensure there is a quality of the verification process. So this is something is the first step that we would start with. So once the VBs are selected and approved, they can actually put their candidate applicants. Sharon, next one, please. So the verifying body would put forth their applications for the verifiers to be approved. So there are several criteria that we would look into when it comes to the approval of the verifying bodies. So, sorry, verifiers. So the verifier should also start with, approval would also start with the application process. So the verifier should apply for the, to become a approved verifier. So there are certain criteria again that we would look into. One, we need to make sure that, they are not freelancers. So they are part of the verifying body. And secondly, we also look at, if they have the required education, required skill set, and required experience, the work experience in conducting the social audits. And also we would look at, if they have taken up any relevant trainings or the and the accreditations that they have taken. So once they apply for this, what we do is, we review each question in the application to make sure that we have all those details matches with the candidate's application. And once we feel that, like, yes, they are eligible to go forward, we make sure that, like, that is being communicated, and upon which they have to take the trainings. So they have to complete the e-learning, all the 7 modules, and make sure at the end of the training, they have to pass the exams. Otherwise, they will not be approved, and, it will be suspended. So apart from this, like, these are all the data which has been given by the verifiers and the verifying bodies. Where Sumero also goes an extra step in making sure that the data given by them is accurate. So we do the application audits as well. So we pick up the applications at any point in stage, right from application through the approval stage. We want to make sure that this data given by them is accurate. So we pick up applications randomly and also based on the risk factors. We would reach out to the applicants to get us more documents if required. And also we look at cross-check that with the applications. If we see there are gaps in what they have given in the application versus, like, it could be their work experience or it could be their educational experience, we reach out to them, clarify where the inconsistencies are. And if we see that there's a vast difference between what they are saying in the application and what we are seeing in their documents, we would also make sure to suspend those. So these are some of the activities that we would do before even we call them as a qualified verifiers. So that, like, we have a good pool of verifiers in place to make sure the verification process is consistent and the process are followed. Next slide, please. Okay, before I move on to this, do you have any questions?
Please continue, Rupa. We will address questions at the end.
Sure. Thank you, Sharon. Okay. So there are other quality assurance activities that we have developed. So SLCP and Sumera has worked together and designed some of the QA activities to make sure the verification process is followed and the verification data is consistent and reliable for the end users. So Sharon, next one, please. So one of the quality assurance measures that we are looking at is the desktop review. So desktop reviews are basically a remote assessment of the verification report. So after completion of the verification process and the verification data has been uploaded, within 10 working days, we pick up the reports for desktop reviews. Please note, we are not doing the desktop reviews on 100% of the reports, but we pick up reports on sampling methodology, and we also make sure if there are any risk associated, we look at that as well. And what we do in desktop review is basically we look at the report, we review the reports to check the verification data. So what we look in that is, like, if the factory responses have been verified or not, if the corrected response by the verifier is accurately written or not, and like, sometimes it so happens there could be instances where facility provides inconsistent information, but that is not corrected by the verifier, or the other example could be instances where the question could be misunderstood by the verifier, causing the corrected response to be misleading. And sometimes there could also be the misinterpretation of the local laws or misapplication of the local laws. And we also look at, like, during the desktop review, we also look at the verification protocols have been followed or not, if they are the SLCP approved verifiers who've done the verification, the number of days spent in the facility, and all the protocols have been met or not. Then we have shadow verification. The other activity that we do is shadow verification. So here in shadow verification, it's more of an observation that we do as a VOO to assess the verifier's performance, to make sure that the protocol is followed or not, verification conducted is in line with the SLCP expectation. So here again, we look at some of the risk factors such as, like the verifier performance or known issues with the VB performance, or if the fact facility is involved in a dispute or a complaint, or if there were any suspected cases of bribery or corruptions. And all the observations are captured in a standard format. And here in the shadow verification, VOO does not participate in the verification process, but make sure that, like we review how the verifier is doing, whether they are gathering all the required information required, they're following all the protocols. So we look at the time management as well, look at their knowledge on the laws, the local laws, or the language that they are speaking, all of that we would see into. Next one, please. And duplicate or counter verification, when we talk about counter verifications, I would say it is a high level one-day visit that Sumera would do post the verification process. So here we look at how the SLCP procedures were followed by the initial verifier and the actual verification. We look at, like if the skills and knowledge were followed, to ensure the verification or the content is accurate. And we almost use the same method of verifying information, but this would be a condensed version of the verification. So this is generally done, the counter verification is done by Sumera, and in places or in countries where we don't have the presence, we would have the qualified verifying bodies to do the counter verification. And we analyze the difference between the initial verification and also the counter verification. And wherever we see the differences, we would also highlight that with SLCP. And duplicate verifications, if we talk about the duplicate verifications are done by another VB. And just to analyze the difference, if there are any differences seen between initial and duplicate verification. So we look at if there was any systems oversight, or if there were any issues that were seen between the verifications, and any significant issues that didn't show up in the initial verification, which was shown in the duplicate verifications, we would do more of investigation. So there are different activities that we would look into to make sure that, like if there are any gaps between the initial and our visits. And the last one I would say is we also look into the verified body management check. So here what we make sure is along with the factory visits, we also ensure that the verifying bodies have got the relevant policies and procedures in place, and they are committed to make sure that they develop and enforce the written policies and procedures on verified competence. And we look at training SLCP approved training for the approved SLCP verifiers, and the VB's commitment on internal quality and reviews, and if there are any calibration in process, and integrity and ethics again on the training, and what kind of policies and procedures they have in place. And these are all aligned with the SLCP requirements. So this is something that we would look into when we do the VB management check. So we directly talk to the VBs and make sure we review the documents. We also speak to them. We organize for meeting to make sure that, like whatever has been, that they are committed to and they are following and enforcing that. Next one, please. In all these, like be it the visits, the desktop reviews, or be it the shadow or counter or duplicate, what we do is, like if we see a significant difference, there are chances that it could lead to an invalidation of the verified assessment. So this would only happen in the extreme cases. We would also make sure to check on the difference what we are seeing between the initial verification and our activities. So we don't generally invalidate all the reports, but we will make sure that, if there are extreme cases, be it the quality or be it to do with the ethical issues, we would definitely invalidate those reports and make sure the facilities are informed and SLCP is also informed. Next one, please. So this is what I was talking about, if the basic standards are not met, like if the data collection tool not completed, like not all questions are verified during the verification, or the data collection has been given in a local language and not in English, or there are significant number of findings that are not supported with evidence or clearly communicated. Those are the times where we would invalidate those reports. Or it could be that verifier requirements are not met. So if the verifier requirement, like whoever is conducting the initial verifications is not approved by VO, like I said, everybody must go through the approval process. In case if they have not, that's something that we would raise it and invalidate. And also, like if the verifier who's doing the verification was part of the initial joint assessment with the facility, they are not eligible to do the verification. So in those cases, again, we would call it off. And SLCP has come up with a mandate data. So if they are not followed, then again, that's one of the reasons we would invalidate. And then, like in case if there are ethical issues that we see, it could be bribery or it could be any unethical issues, then yes, of course, the report would not be finalized. And if there was any access denial from the factory, or even it could be like entirely or partly, like if the documentations were not given or the worker interviews were not, like allowed, or if they were not given the documents, if there were critical observation that we were seeing, like which are not captured in the report, in those cases, again, the report can be invalidated. Okay, so again, like VO also seeks for your feedback. So there are different kinds of feedback that we would, like seek for. So one is from the facility, like this is optional. The facility can also fill in the verification feedback survey to talk about the conduct of the verifier and also if the verifier has followed the verification process or not. And then like the feedback form is also sent to the verifiers, where they would also talk about like the verification process. And last but not the least, like the verification feedback survey is also given to the end users to check on the competency and the accuracy of the data. So all these, like for all the stakeholders, it's optional, but this is something, like we would encourage you to do so that, like we can get better and better with our process.
Thank you so much for that, Rupa. I think it's really helpful to have a good understanding of how you ensure the quality of the verification process as a whole. So then you as a manufacturer also know what is behind it. And when you see, for example, that a verifier is not performing up to standard, do give us that feedback because it will come back into, for example, the scoring of the verifier, and then contribute to overall verification quality. So let me stop here for our final poll. So we're almost at the end of our webinar, but I would like to really understand if everything was understood well. What do we perhaps need to explain a little bit more before we go to the final round of questions? So please go to polls or polling on your screen. You should see the questions pop up and give us your thoughts. So do you think something is true or false? Know that you can just guess if you don't know the answer, and that it is, of course, as you've seen, anonymous. So really just click what you think is true or false, and then we will go over it in a minute or so. I see that many of you are giving your answers on the screen. I encourage you to do so. So just guess whether you think something is true or false, and we will be going over it in a minute. Please go ahead and give us your vote on the screen. I see the final votes are coming in. So I'm going to give it 10 more seconds. So please, if you want to participate, guess whether a statement is true or false on your screen. And I am now closing the poll to share the results with you. So let's see. The first statement, the verification summary gives you an overview of legal non-compliances. That is indeed true. So I see 81% of you have that correct. As mentioned, as SLCP, we don't score, we don't look into compliance with, for example, Brand's Code of Conduct, but we do have a lot of legal questions, as any facility across the world, of course, has to comply with international labor standards and national labor laws. So we do have questions related to this, and you can find legal non-compliances in the verification summary indeed. So then the second statement, a verification will always include an opening and a closing meeting. Indeed, as 92% of you say, that is true. Then the third statement, the facility can contact the verifier at any time to change the information in a verified assessment report. Here, 71% of you said that's false, which is indeed correct, but still 29% thought this was true. Know that you should contact the verifier during the closing meeting when you see things that you want to discuss, or within 48 hours after seeing the verified assessment report for the first time. So you cannot afterwards change the information in a verified assessment report. That is final, and that is the information that you can share with any end user that you want to share your data with. Then the fourth statement, a facility can dispute the answer to a single tool question if they don't agree. So here, most of you thought that's true, 68%, while indeed it is false. So you cannot dispute the answer to a single tool question. You can only dispute the process as a whole. So for example, if you feel that the verifier did not follow the rules in the verification protocol, or if they were of improper conduct, then you can dispute a verified assessment. But the answer to a single tool question, in the end, it's the verifier who has the final word on that. So you can definitely discuss this again at the closing meeting or within 48 hours after seeing the report. You can supply more information to the verifier, for example, but in the end, it's the verifier that decides what the answer is to a single tool question, and you cannot dispute that. Then finally, quality assurance activities aim to ensure overall verification quality and gather information for improvements to the SLCP process and system. That is indeed correct. So they are not meant to change an individual report, but really to improve the overall system and ensure overall verification quality. So that brings us to the end of our webinar. And now it's time to answer some of the questions that are still open. So I would like to ask all attendees to include your questions now in the Q&A if you still feel you need an answer to them. And I would like to ask my fellow speakers to turn on their cameras so that we can address some of the questions that are still open. Maybe to start, because I had a quick look at the Q&A while Rupa was speaking, and I saw that there were a lot of questions about FSLM and VFSLM, and how does that relate to SLCP? So I believe, Venkat, with Shahi, you are a user of HIG, I believe. So perhaps you can add on to what I will say now. But to clarify, so we spoke in last week's webinar on the data collection tool. The data collection tool can be filled in offline, but also online on an accredited host platform. And HIG is one of the accredited host platforms on which you can fill in the data collection tool. So FSLM and VFSLM, that's really making use of the SLCP Converged Assessment Framework. The questions asked in FSLM are the questions in the SLCP data collection tool, and the verification process that you go through in VFSLM is actually the SLCP verification process. And we have an FAQ on our help desk. The link is provided by the team in the Q&A, but maybe Mr. Venkat, can you give a bit more context as well, how people should see FSLM, VFSLM, and SLCP?
Essentially, I think you could have been more precise with that language, Sharon. I think it's extremely objective answer. We exactly follow the same process, although internally the environment team is a separate team coming under the projects team, and we handle social compliance as such. But the FSLM and VFSLM essentially are a kind of a replication of what happens, so the questions happens in the SLCP.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you so much for that. So as mentioned, if there's still anything unclear about FSLM, VFSLM, go to the link provided, the FAQ we have on our help desk. Another question I saw quite a bit coming up was about timelines. So what are the timelines for the SLCP assessment process? For this, I will give a brief answer, but then hand over to Sami, if that's okay. So how they organized it within their facility. But in general, we have a couple of, let's say, mandatory timelines. They are noted in the verification protocol. So if you go into the verification protocol, you can find them. And they state, for example, that an assessment has to be verified within 2 months of finishing the assessment, that a verifier has to submit the data of the findings of the on-site verification within 10 working days, and that the facility has to review a verified assessment within 14 days before it becomes final. But these are just a couple of mandatory timelines. There's a lot of open space. So maybe Sami, you would like to share how you organize this within your facility when you were planning for your assessment and verification.
Thank you, Sharon. So yeah, for us it was quite easy. It's not that simple. So first of all, there is this, we need to fill in the informations online, and then we agree on a date. They give you a deadline, of course, on which you have to fill in to finish filling in the information online, and then we agree on a date for the assessment to occur. But the deadline was okay, not too short, nothing. So it's quite, as you said, quite flexible. And you are in contact with the SLCP assessment, the person in charge of the assessment. So you agree together with on a date.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you so much for that, Sami. I also saw some questions coming in on quality assurance activities. So Rupa, I'm going to turn to you for these. There was a question, for example, on the cost of QA. So for this, what I can say is that SLCP covers the cost of quality assurance activities. So for example, if a facility is asked to participate in a shadow verification or a counter verification, there's no cost for the facility. It's a cost that we cover as we want to make sure that the quality of our verification is up to standard. But maybe Rupa, maybe you can explain a little bit more on how you approach a facility or the process of including a facility when you're planning on quality assurance activities.
So when we talk about the, like some of the visits like counter verification or duplicate verification or shadow verifications, especially with duplicate and counter verifications, before the verification, that before our visit, we would make sure we'll tell you the intent of the visit or when we are coming. So it is all going to be announced verification visits from our end. So you would have all the information, and in case, like if you say that it is not the right time for us to visit, we would also accommodate that to make sure that, we are not hampering your production. So all the information has been given to you beforehand. So before our visit. Shadow verifications, we would also visit the facility at the same time the initial verification is happening. So we would come with the VBs or the verifiers and make sure that, we are part of the process, but we would be observers in that case. But mostly, like we would provide all the information beforehand, before the verification. Shannon?
Okay, Rupa, I think that's very clear. Thank you so much. Maybe let me check in here with Anne. Anne, let's see, Anne is telling me over chat that there's a repeat question about bribery and invalidation of a verification report. Anne, can you tell us a bit more about that? And maybe Rupa can help with an answer.
Yes, thank you. So somebody is asking what kind of sanctions would be in place if a verification report is found to be invalidated. I said that I directed them to the quality assurance manual and also our resource desk, but if you could just help add any specifics in case of extreme circumstances, if there are any other practices that are in place aside from the facility being able to conduct another self-assessment afterwards.
So when we were talking about the invalidation of the reports, like if there are extreme cases like bribery, or like if it is any corruption that we are talking about, not only we invalidate the report, we would also suspend the verifier, and also make sure that we are invalidating the report and telling the facility that like we are going to be doing another verification. And so in this case, like what we also have a scorecard for verifying body or the verifier, so which we would share it with the performance has been shared regularly with the verifiers to make sure that they are understanding the inconsistencies, what they, like we've been, or the errors that they are making in the report or during their visit. But this wouldn't call for invalidation, but like any of these cases that we just spoke about, like bribery or like the corruptions, like so ethical behavior, like if unethical behaviors are seen, we would also immediately suspend the verifiers. And if you see that, like, okay, you can also raise the dispute. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sharon. Like the facilities can also raise a dispute if you feel that the verification process has not been followed by the verifier. So we would again do a thorough investigation. The Sumera BOO comes into picture to make sure, like the disputes are heard, and we would ensure that, like the further investigation has been made before taking a final step of suspending or invalidating the report. Sharon, anything else that you would want to add on from SLCP?
Thank you so much for that, Rupa. I think what's key here to mention as well is that when selecting a verifier body, we will in the future have scores available as well for a verifier body. So we're currently collecting data on their performance. There's not enough data yet to come to public scores. But these public scores will be available, so perhaps next year, and will help facilities as well to decide on which verifier body they would like to go with. So then you can see as well, what kind of quality, except for the price, you already know, of course, through the quote, but you will have additional information to base your verifier body decision on as well. But Anne, you said there was an additional question related to this?
I just want to clarify that it's being asked on the part of the facility. So they want to know if there's any sanction to the facility. I believe I'm correct by saying that the facility can apply to do another self-assessment immediately after. But if the same problem persists, then the report's going to continuously be invalidated. So it's in the facility's best interest to change their practices.
Yes, you're absolutely correct, Anne. So the VOO can make let's say, notes with a verified assessment report, so they can state why a verified assessment report is invalidated. So that means that within our system, the report cannot be shared, an invalidated report cannot be shared, and there could be a note with it to say why it cannot be shared. So indeed, it's in the facility's best interest to, why would they go through the process if they would, conduct practices like bribery, because those reports will not be accepted and you cannot share those reports. Maybe I would like to go to Taya, because we haven't heard from Taya yet, and from a brand perspective, like, why is the quality of a report so important, and the confidence that they have perhaps in SLCP verified data.
Thank you, Sharon. So the quality of the data from a brand's perspective is very important because we have had these assessments of our own code of conduct assessments for a very long time, as most of the brand partners who are in the call might know, and also the facilities who have gone through the assessments for more than 10 years. So to let go of them and to adopt completely to SLCP and have all the verifications through SLCP is going to be a huge, step when it comes to let going of our conventional COVC assessments. So the quality is going to be really very important, and also the steps which are taken by SLCP to ensure that only the certified verifiers are verifying the reports, and also the process for selecting a verifier is really intense. And even when we went through the certification process, the steps involved, and also the examination, all the sessions which we had to attend before becoming a certified verifier is truly very promising, and also gives a very positive sign to brands like us to trust in the SLCP verifying process. So once the verifier is selected, they verify the report, which is self-assessed by the factory. And also, we accept it, and then we upload it into our system and let go of our COVC assessment. So when it comes to the brand accepting these assessments, truly SLCP has done a great work in selection of the verifiers, their quality selections, and also VOO, which does the counter verification to ensure that the steps which were followed by the verifier to assess the self-assessment report is also very good and very precise. And that's why we all strive towards, inducting all our factories into SLCP in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Utaya. And looking at the time, I would like to say a big thank you to all of the speakers today. So thank you, Utaya, Sami, Venkat, and Rupa for explaining together with me two facilities today the SLCP verification process. Know that as a facility, you can always go to the help desk if you want to have an answer to your questions. I saw many of the questions answered today were actually in our frequently asked questions on the help desk. So do go there. Sami mentioned it as well. It's a rich resource for any facility going through the process to understand it better and to get support as well. So on the top right, you see submit a request. If you can't find the answer to your question, you can submit a request and one person of our team will definitely be able to help you. On our help desk, I want to highlight the resources that are available for the verification process. So there's a facility guide for verification, for example, that guides you in each step of the verification process. The verification protocol that was mentioned often, that has all the rules and the procedures for a verification, as well as the verifier guidance document. So you can easily find all these resources on our help desk for more information. Also on our help desk will be available the slides and recording of this webinar. Before you go, please give us some feedback as well. We mentioned a couple of times how important that is for us to further improve our training sessions, our process and system in general. So please do give us that feedback as well. So again, thank you so much to my fellow speakers in this webinar. Thank you for all the attendees that stayed with us until the end of the webinar. My apologies for, I think all that talk about COVID gave me some troubles in my throat as well. But thank you so much for staying with us. I hope you found it useful, and we hope to welcome you again in next week's webinar. So have a lovely rest of your day, and see you again soon. Bye.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, everyone.